Well, here's the reason why I believe that evolutionary astrology is fascinating, because when we want to understand the karma of the person and what they need to resolve in order to move beyond that karma, we look to what we call the chart behind the chart. And we start by looking at the south node of the moon and the aspects it makes, the planetary positions, the sign, the house it falls in, and we move on from there. So today we're going to look at the chart of Jiddu Krishnamurti, the wise soul, the great spiritual teacher. I can't say enough about him to do him the honor that I feel. But anyway, let's just start. Now, one important point before I dive into the karmic story is that we look at the south. When we look at the south node, we're going to interpret the sign, the house, the planets that fall there on their shadow side. That is, we're going to interpret them negatively because every sign has its high manifestation and its shadow, the pitfalls you can fall in if you don't get it right, so to speak. Okay, so let's look at the south node, which we see falls in the seventh house and Virgo. So what can go wrong with the seventh house? I mean, the seventh house is the house of marriage, the relationships. Seventh house is about equal relationships. It's correlated with Libra, the scales, balance, harmony, equality. So what went wrong is that he found himself in circumstances where he wasn't on equal grounds. He was defined by the relationships. He wasn't able to develop his own, sense of self. He wasn't able to make a stand, to put his foot down, and say, this is me, this is what I want, and to actually may not have been able to even choose who he was with. Okay, let's continue. When we're talking about Virgo, what can be the downside of Virgo? Well, Virgo can be plagued by self-doubt. Virgo can be haunted by too many thoughts, like what today we would call OCD, putting yourself down and sort of feeling guilty and having to compensate for that by serving others. It is the sign of service. But who did he have to serve? What did he have to serve? It was not really in tune with what was good for him. Okay, now let's look at the ruler of the south node, a huge important step. And the ruler of Virgo obviously is Mercury. Now here I'm already starting to get the goosebumps. I mean, Mercury is about communication. It's about thought. It's about listening, writing, communicating, exchanging ideas. Okay, when we look at in the context of the past life, many times Mercury will represent a young person. And we know that as a young child, Krishnamurti was discovered, right, by the leaders of the Theosophical movement, and they defined a role for him. And even if this was a beautiful, spiritual, highly respected role, they defined it, right? Okay, so our next big step is to look at where this Mercury falls regarding the house and the signs. So let's look at the house, the fourth house. And here I already see a correlation with the seventh house. And we want to look at themes that recur, okay, to let us know that we're on the right track in our understanding, in our analysis. And the fourth house has to do with family, with basically with the tribe, okay, with your roots. And so we're getting this feeling again of a person who's entrapped by their family, by the close people they're with. And also the fourth house, I would go further and say that when I look at it sort of in the karmic story negatively, you're looking at a person who couldn't flower, because we're looking at the opposing house. The 10th is about your public role, right? Is the way you're seen in the world. So in the fourth house, you're kind of in hiding. So this is the predicament that Krishnamurti found himself in. Okay, good. Now let's move on to the sign Taurus. So what is the downside of Taurus? There's no movement. It's stagnant. Okay, there's no development. And again, it's this a theme that we're looking at of a person who is stuck, I would say. Let's look for hard aspects with the South Node. So we're looking for oppositions or squares. Now, what is squaring the South Node, which is Krishnamurti himself in a past lifetime? What was squaring him? That means what was at cross purposes with him, what he couldn't overcome, okay, has to do with Neptune and Pluto. I mean, what a heavy combination of planets, okay? Neptune has to do with transcending the self. So really it's beyond language. And if I think about, again, looking at all the details we already kind of consolidated into a story, I feel that Krishnamurti was at cross purposes with a spiritual organization, person, something that sucked him in to that position where he lost his self, his ego, because Neptune is about transcending the ego, and that can be beautiful, right? But we're looking at the negative. What can go wrong with that? Then with Pluto conjuncting that Neptune, and I mean, Pluto, when we find it opposing or squaring the South Node, we're talking about something nightmarish that may have happened, something damaging. Okay, now just to go back to Krishnamurti's biography in this lifetime, and we know that his younger brother died in his 20s, and Krishnamurti at that point experienced like a breakdown, which after I think a couple of years led him to understand what he wanted to do and to break away eventually, but very clearly from the Theosophical movement and from the role that he was designated for, and it led him to disavow the whole idea of being a guru and to dissolve the organization. So we're talking about a Plutonian event. Now, Pluto has to do with deep transformation. It has to do with, Pluto is the god of the underworld in Greek mythology. It has to do with going deep down into your psyche, looking at your demons. Pluto demands you to be courageous, really, and look at the dark side, look at what went wrong, and undergo this transformation. And from what I've read about Krishnamurti, at this point in his life, after his brother had died, he took some time alone, I mean, a couple of years, secluded himself to really think and understand what's going on here. And I mean, and he experienced epiphanies. Talk about Neptune and Pluto. I mean, undergoing a deep transformation, a Neptunian transformation, where you yield to something vaster than yourself. And this whole time and the conclusion he came to, this is really exciting. You know, this is what led him to break through, to break his karma, and go towards that North Node, okay? Krishnamurti, I feel, broke his karma big time because who was Krishnamurti? He was a spiritual leader, okay? He didn't want to be anybody's guru, so he did it his own way. First house. Now, Pisces? I mean, give me a break. Pisces is about transcending the ego. Pisces is very hard to define in language because Pisces is beyond language, right? Now, didn't Krishnamurti talk? I mean, so much of his talk, his writing, of the message that he wants to put out there is that thought hinders us, prevents us from reaching the truth. Thought, Mercury, Gemini, that was what was at cross purposes with him. And his North Node, what emerged in him was something that's vaster than words. God. Now, I want to qualify what I said about the South Node and the North Node. I mean, the South Node is, you can also see talents that the person brings into this world regarding that sign and the placement, etc. And knowing that the South Node is in Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, I mean, Krishnamurti spent his whole life from the age of 30-something talking, right? Writing. Mercury is the messenger of the gods, right? So he had that innate talent and inclination. So he used his gifts that he brought with him from a previous lifetime. If you believe in reincarnation, if you don't, we can, you can think of the ancestors, our genetic construction, I guess you would say, but using the talents of what you bring, this, which we can see in the South Node, and evolving towards the North Node to Pisces in the first house. And I'd love to hear and read your responses if you have any thoughts about what I just said. And if you like this content, please subscribe so that I can make more videos, because what I love to do is teach evolutionary astrology and talk about historical figures who left their mark on history, or who I just fell in love with at some point in my life, and then I look at their chart and I see the correlations and I'm in awe and I want to talk about it. So hope to see you later, and hope it was interesting. Bye.